Top 10 US cities overcrowded by immigrants is yours on the list. Predictions for 2025. Have you noticed your morning commute getting longer, rent creeping higher, or your once quiet neighborhood suddenly buzzing with new voices, languages, and cultures? You're not imagining things. Immigration has been reshaping the urban landscape of the US, and some cities are feeling the pressure more than others. So, which cities are on the brink of overcrowding, and what could this mean for the way we live in 2025? Whether you're curious or concerned, it's time to dive into the top 10 US cities most impacted by immigration today and find out if your hometown is already living tomorrow's reality. Welcome to the Journey of Wisdom, where we look beyond the headlines to understand the deeper shifts shaping our world. Number 1. Irving, Texas. Let's talk about Irving, Texas. Yes, Irving. It might not be the first place that comes to mind when you think of major changes sweeping through America's cities, but Irving is transforming fast, and you deserve to know why. Right now, nearly half the population, over 46%, is foreign-born, which makes Irving one of the most immigrant-rich cities in the entire United States. That's a major shift, and it's happening rapidly. With strong communities from India, Mexico, Vietnam, and more, entire neighborhoods now carry the rhythm, colors, food, and language of cultures from across the world. You can walk down certain streets and feel like you've traveled continents, smelling spices from street-side Indian eateries, hearing Spanish over cafe counters, or seeing Vietnamese shops line local plazas. This cultural explosion isn't just about the people, though. It's deeply tied to the city's booming economic engine. You see, Irving isn't just growing in population. It's attracting serious business power. Huge corporations like ExxonMobil, Fluor Corporation, and McKesson have made their headquarters or major offices here, creating a tidal wave of job opportunities. For many immigrants chasing opportunity and stability, Irving offers a powerful mix: a welcoming community, jobs, and the chance to build a better life. That's the American dream, right? But when growth happens too fast, even good things can come with growing pains. And here's where the story gets more complex. Irving's infrastructure is struggling to keep pace with the speed of its transformation. Housing prices have shot up, now sitting at a median of around $400,000. Not outrageous when you compare it to California or New York, but almost double what homes cost just 10 years ago. If you've lived in Irving for a while, you're probably feeling the pressure. Rents are rising, and more people are competing for the same apartments and homes. And it doesn't stop there. Traffic is becoming a daily frustration, schools are overcrowded, and public services are stretched thin trying to support the population boom. Now let's pause for a moment. What does it actually mean when a city like Irving becomes so diverse so quickly? Some long-time residents find themselves asking, is this still Texas? Or has my city become something else entirely? That question carries layers of meaning. On the surface, it speaks to how cultures shift a place's identity. But deeper down, it challenges us to consider, what defines a city really? Is it its past, its people, its values? Or is it the ability to evolve, to welcome new chapters and grow stronger through diversity? In fact, walk into some neighborhoods in Irving today and you might spot more Indian restaurants than American diners. And no, that's not an exaggeration. This isn't about one culture overtaking another. It's about new communities finding space to thrive, bringing with them traditions, values, and flavors that blend into something uniquely Irving. But then, where's the line between cultural celebration and cultural displacement? And how do we make sure everyone, newcomers and long-timers, feels like they belong? Here's the truth. Irving is not losing its identity, it's rewriting it. That's not something to fear, but something to engage with. The question for all of us, whether we live in Irving, a city like it, or are just watching from afar, is how do we prepare our cities, our communities, and our own hearts for this kind of change? What kind of neighbors do we want to be when everything around us starts to look and sound different? If you're living in a place that's shifting quickly, whether because of immigration, technology, or politics, take this as an invitation to be curious, not defensive. Learn your neighbor's story. Try the food from a culture you don't know. Ask yourself what kind of city you want to help build. Because the lesson in Irving isn't just about overcrowding or rising prices. It's about adaptation, resilience, and the incredible potential of multicultural community. When we approach change with compassion instead of fear, we don't just survive it, we grow from it. So, is your city next on the list? And more importantly, how will you respond when it is? Number 2, Anaheim, California. Let's take a closer look at Anaheim, California, a place many of us know as the home of Disneyland, a city that promises laughter, fireworks, and magical memories. But beneath the surface of those joyful vacation snapshots lies a much more complex reality, one that too few people talk about. Anaheim isn't just a tourist hotspot. It's one of the most overcrowded and heavily immigrant-populated cities in the United States today. Now, that's not a bad thing. In fact, it's something to honor and understand. Over 54% of Anaheim's population identifies as Latino, and nearly 40% were born outside the US, with strong roots from Mexico, El Salvador, and Guatemala. Many neighborhoods here feel more like Latin American towns than a traditional image of Southern California, and in those spaces, culture thrives through food, language, community bonds, and resilience. But we also have to talk about what happens when a city grows so fast that it can no longer carry its own weight. So here's the deeper truth. Anaheim is bursting at the seams, and families are being squeezed from all sides. You see, it's not just the population that's growing, it's the cost of simply existing. The median home price in Anaheim has soared past $850,000, and even a modest one-bedroom apartment rents for about $2,500 a month. Now think about that, especially when many of the jobs available in the area, particularly for immigrants, are low-wage, temporary, or tied to the tourism industry. Isn't it heartbreaking that while millions flock to Disneyland for happiness and escape, many Anaheim residents, people who serve those very tourists, struggle to make ends meet just outside the gates? Workers live paycheck to paycheck, sharing apartments with extended family members, sometimes 2 or 3 families packed into a small unit just to survive. And while the city sees billions flow through its streets thanks to tourism, that wealth doesn't trickle down to the people who keep the machine running. Why is it that the very people who build the magic never get to experience it themselves? This raises a powerful question we all need to reflect on. How can a city be so wealthy in appearance, yet so poor in reality? The Buddha once taught, "Contentment is the greatest wealth." But how can people feel content, let alone secure, when they are constantly under pressure from rising rents, stagnant wages, and overcrowded conditions? It makes you wonder, is the system designed to sustain community and compassion, or to prioritize profit at the expense of human dignity? And here's a more personal question for you. If you lived in Anaheim, how would you feel waking up every morning knowing you work hard, contribute deeply, yet still can't afford your own peace of mind. That's not just an economic issue, it's a spiritual one. It's about whether we as a society still value basic fairness, connection, and empathy. Now, don't get me wrong, Anaheim's immigrant communities are incredibly strong. They bring life, flavor, soul, and an unbreakable spirit, but strength shouldn't mean having to struggle alone. If anything, their story calls on each of us to see beyond the postcard version of America and truly ask, what kind of cities are we building, and for whom? This isn't about pointing fingers, it's about shining light on truth, because only then can we change it. So, as we explore more cities like Anaheim, places where the dream and the reality collide, keep this in mind. True progress isn't about how shiny a place looks on the outside. It's about how well the people inside are actually living. Number 3. New York, New York. Let's explore New York City, a place that often feels like the world wrapped into 5 boroughs, where every block speaks a different language, every corner smells like a different continent, and every subway ride is a front-row seat to humanity in motion. With over 3.2 million foreign-born residents, New York isn't just diverse, it's the most immigrant-packed metropolis in the United States, and in fact, it holds more immigrants than some entire states. From Washington Heights, rich in Dominican culture, to Flushing, home to a thriving Chinese community, New York is the ultimate cultural mosaic, where over 180 languages are spoken, and where food, music, traditions, and beliefs from across the globe live side by side. But as beautiful and inspiring as this diversity is, there's no denying the strain it places on the city's already overwhelmed infrastructure. Housing costs have soared, with the median rent for a one-bedroom apartment reaching $4,500 per month, while home ownership requires shelling out $700,000 or more for spaces many would barely call livable. This has forced thousands of families into shared apartments, where multiple generations often live together not out of choice, but necessity. And housing is just the beginning. The public transit system, once the envy of the nation, now struggles under the weight of over 3 million daily riders, with outdated equipment, frequent delays, overcrowded platforms, and rising fares making the daily commute a stressful endurance test. You might think driving is the answer, but in New York, traffic is relentless, with cabs, ride-shares, delivery vehicles, and pedestrians constantly jockeying for space. Finding parking? It's become an urban legend, with monthly spots averaging $500, if you're lucky enough to find one. And yet, despite the soaring costs, the chaos, and the crush of people still come. Because beneath the frustration and fatigue lies a deeper truth. For generations, New York has symbolized hope. It's where an immigrant with little more than a dream can carve out a life, build a business, and send their kids to college. It's where artists, entrepreneurs, workers, and thinkers from every background believe that somehow this city will give them a chance. As the Buddha once said, it is better to travel well than to arrive, and for many the journey to New York is not just a relocation, it's a lifelong pilgrimage toward possibility. But now we must ask, at what point does possibility begin to collapse under pressure? Can a city this large, this crowded, this stretched continue to offer the same promise it once did? Or is the American dream in New York becoming something only the wealthy can afford to chase? If you're between the ages of 30 and 65, maybe raising children or reflecting on where to plant roots, how do you weigh the excitement of a city like New York against the cost of your well-being? It's a question more and more people are asking, not just about New York, but about cities across the country facing similar surges. The lesson here is not to fear change, but to face it with clarity. Cities like New York thrive when they remember that infrastructure must grow with people, and that cultural richness is only sustainable when it's matched by housing, transit, and care systems that honor human dignity. So as we move to the next city on our list, ask yourself, what kind of growth are we building for, and who gets to benefit from it? Because the strength of a city isn't measured by how many people live there, but by how well it supports the people who do. You've just seen how shifting immigration patterns are impacting major US cities, some more than others. Is this the future of urban America? I meant future, ready if you believe in staying ahead of the curve. There's more eye-opening info coming up, so stay with us to see what 2025 could bring for your city and beyond. Number 4. Los Angeles, California. Let's talk about Los Angeles, California. A city you've probably seen in movies, heard in music, or maybe even dreamed about visiting. But beyond the glitz of Hollywood and the sunshine-filled postcards lies a powerful, complicated reality that affects millions of people every day. Los Angeles isn't just a city. It's an international mosaic where nearly 37% of residents are foreign-born. That means over a third of the people living here came from somewhere else, bringing with them languages, cultures, histories, and dreams. Walk through Los Angeles and it truly feels like walking through the world. One moment, you're surrounded by Korean signage in Koreatown. Then you're catching the scent of Ethiopian spices in Little Ethiopia, or hearing Tagalog in historic Filipino town, or joining a cultural festival in Thai town or Little Armenia. Los Angeles is diversity in its purest, most vibrant form, and it's one of the reasons people from across the globe are still drawn to it. But here's where things get real. Diversity alone doesn't solve everything, especially when the city is bursting at the seams. With so many people coming to Los Angeles looking for hope and opportunity, the city is now facing some of the most severe overcrowding and affordability issues in the nation. The median home price sits around $900,000, and if you're looking to rent, even a tiny one-bedroom apartment will cost you close to $2,800 a month. Think about that for a moment. How many people earning minimum or average wages could actually afford that and still live with dignity? This is where the dream starts to feel distant for many. When wages don't keep up with rent, people are forced into cramped apartments, converted garages, or even their cars. That's not just hard, it's heartbreaking. And as more families squeeze into fewer places, the strain shows everywhere. In the schools that are packed beyond capacity, in the hospitals where waiting rooms stretch for hours, and on the streets where tent cities grow faster than the city can respond. With over 75,000 people currently homeless in Los Angeles County, this is not just a housing problem, it's a humanitarian crisis. And the challenges don't end there. If you've ever driven in Los Angeles, you know that traffic is a nightmare. The average commuter loses about 95 hours a year stuck in traffic. That's almost 4 full days of your life gone just sitting in a car. While public transportation exists, Los Angeles was built with cars in mind, and for many, it's still the only viable way to get around. And what about jobs? Unless you're in tech, entertainment, or high-level business, wages simply don't match the cost of living. That leaves a huge portion of the population, many of whom are immigrants, working multiple jobs, struggling just to stay afloat in a city that seems to move faster than they can catch up. So here's the question. Why do people still come to Los Angeles knowing all of this? The answer lies in the spirit of hope. Despite everything, Los Angeles is still a city of possibility, cultural acceptance, and reinvention. It's a place where people believe their hard work might someday pay off, where they can live among others who understand their language, their struggles, and their dreams. It's a place where they can belong. As the Buddha once said, thousands of candles can be lit from a single candle, and the life of the candle will not be shortened. That's the truth of immigrant communities in LA. They keep the light alive not just for themselves, but for others around them too. But we have to ask ourselves as a society, are we doing enough to support that light, or are we letting it flicker in the wind? What kind of future are we building when the very people who make our cities vibrant can no longer afford to live in them? If we truly value diversity, innovation, and humanity, then we must also value equity, access, and shared responsibility. Los Angeles teaches us that beauty and struggle can exist side by side, but it's our compassion, awareness, and action that will determine which one grows stronger. So what does your city look like today? And if it starts to resemble LA tomorrow, what will you do to make sure everyone still has a place to call home? Number 5. San Jose, California. Let's take a deep breath and look at San Jose, California, a city that's often painted as a tech utopia, where innovation thrives, salaries soar, and the future is being coded line by line. But behind the glow of Silicon Valley lies a more sobering story, one that impacts not just the tech elite, but thousands of everyday families who live in the shadows of glass towers and billion-dollar startups. Nearly 39% of San Jose's population is foreign-born, many of whom arrived from India, China, and Vietnam, drawn by the promise of opportunity, advancement, and a better life. It's a place where dreams run on algorithms and ambition fuels every corner. But let me ask you, what happens when a city becomes so successful it forgets how to hold the people who built it? You see, San Jose may be booming economically, but it's also bursting at the seams, with housing prices that have spiraled out of control, roads choked with traffic, and a system that's starting to creak under the weight of its own growth. Now, here's a number that might make your heart skip. $1.5 million. That's the median price of a home in San Jose. Not a mansion, not some beachfront estate, just a regular home. Renting? That'll cost you at least $3,500 a month for a modest one-bedroom apartment. And what's truly startling is that even high-paid tech workers, the ones everyone assumes are swimming in wealth, are starting to feel the pressure. But what about the immigrants working in support roles? Drivers, cleaners, restaurant staff, caregivers? They're the ones holding up the infrastructure of this city while living in cars, garages, or with 3 families under one roof just to afford rent. And yet, people keep arriving, holding tight to the hope that if they just work hard enough, things will turn in their favor. But at what point does hope become exhaustion? Buddha once said, "There is no path to happiness. Happiness is the path." And yet, in San Jose, the path feels more like a steep climb where the air gets thinner the higher you go. The city, unlike urban giants like New York or Los Angeles, lacks the infrastructure to handle this explosion in growth. Public transit is limited, schools are overcrowded, and traffic? A daily source of frustration and lost hours. It's a city that looks futuristic but feels, in many ways, stretched and unprepared. And yet, there's this undeniable energy, a fire that comes from diverse communities chasing their shot, fueled by a belief that even in struggle, there's purpose. So, here's something to think about. How do we balance innovation with inclusion? Progress with compassion? It's easy to marvel at shiny buildings and groundbreaking technology, but true success lies in how a city treats its most vulnerable, not just its top earners. In San Jose's story, we're reminded that economic growth is only meaningful if everyone can grow with it, and that includes the immigrant families who have poured their heart, skills, and culture into the city's foundation. As we move forward on this list, we have to ask, are we building cities for people or just profits? And if your city is growing fast, just like San Jose, what can you do now to make sure that growth is fair, sustainable, and deeply human? Because in the end, as the Buddha taught, the way is not in the sky, the way is in the heart. And that's where real transformation begins. Number 6. Hialeah, Florida. Let's take a closer look at Hialeah, Florida. A city that doesn't just reflect cultural change, it lives and breathes it in every corner. With nearly 75% of its residents born outside the United States, Hialeah has become a powerful symbol of how immigrant communities shape, define, and transform American cities. Spanish isn't just widely spoken here, it's the primary language of daily life. From street signs to storefronts, from local radio to family gatherings, Spanish flows through this city like a second heartbeat. For many residents, especially older Cuban immigrants who fled decades of political and economic unrest, Hialeah isn't just a place to live, it's a place to rebuild what was lost, to carry on the stories, traditions, and struggles of generations. And that legacy is visible in every family-run shop, every conversation on the sidewalk, and every packed restaurant serving up café con leche and croquetas. But beneath the vibrancy of this tight-knit, culturally rich city lies a series of serious challenges that many residents quietly carry with them every day. The job market here is deeply local and heavily dependent on Spanish-speaking businesses, which creates both a unique strength and a limitation. On one hand, the cultural identity of Hialeah has created a thriving environment for Cuban entrepreneurs and workers who might struggle elsewhere due to language barriers. But on the other hand, if you're someone who doesn't speak Spanish, or you're trying to access broader employment opportunities outside this bubble, your path becomes significantly harder. Add to that a cost of living that continues to rise while wages remain stagnant, and you start to see how even a culturally strong city can feel the weight of economic imbalance. Families here are being stretched. Rent is climbing, home prices are increasing, and it's becoming harder and harder to afford the basics, even with multiple incomes in a household. It's a city that celebrates its roots, but like many others across the country, it's facing a crisis of affordability, one that doesn't discriminate by language or culture. Then there's the issue of infrastructure, the very things we often take for granted until they stop working. Traffic in Hialeah is increasingly congested, turning short commutes into daily frustrations. Schools are packed, trying to provide enough space, teachers, and resources for a growing student population. These stresses don't just create inconvenience, they wear down the spirit of a community that's already working hard to make ends meet. As the Buddha once said, to understand everything is to forgive everything. In cities like Hialeah, we're asked not only to understand the beauty of cultural diversity, but also to acknowledge the pressures that come with it. When we look past headlines and into real lives, we see people doing their best in systems not built to support such rapid transformation. So here's the question worth reflecting on. How can we, as a society, better support cities like Hialeah that are rich in heritage but stretched thin in resources? And if you were to find yourself living there, surrounded by history, resilience, and the rhythm of another language, how would you thrive, connect, or adapt? The lesson here isn't just about immigration or economics. It's about building compassion in a world that's changing faster than most systems can handle. It's about seeing value not just in economic numbers, but in community stories, shared humanity, and cultural contributions that don't always fit neatly into a spreadsheet. As you think about the cities on this list, and the one you live in now, ask yourself, are we building places that truly welcome and support everyone, or just some? And more importantly, what role will you play in shaping the kind of future we all deserve to live in? Still with us? That means you're serious about understanding what's really happening in your city. Type "on the list" in the comments if you think your city is affected or could be next. Keep watching, because the next few minutes could change how you see the future of your community. Number 7. Miami, Florida. Let's take a moment to talk about Miami, Florida, a city so rich in culture and diversity that some say walking its streets feels more like stepping into Latin America than the United States, and with nearly 60% of its residents born outside the country, that feeling isn't far from the truth. Miami has long been a magnet for immigrants, especially from Cuba, Venezuela, Colombia, Nicaragua, and Haiti, and today it stands as one of the most immigrant-dense cities in the entire nation. And while the city is known worldwide for its vibrant nightlife, sun-soaked beaches, and booming international business scene, there's another side to Miami that many people, especially those just arriving, come to know all too well. As more immigrants arrive each day, bringing with them stories of courage, hardship, and hope, Miami is getting denser, and the pressure is being felt in every corner of the city. Housing costs have become one of the biggest challenges here. The median home price is now over $500,000. And if you're renting, expect to pay around $3,000 per month, even for something modest. That means even middle-class families, let alone new arrivals working hard to build a future, are being pushed to the financial edge. Now let's be real. Miami's cultural atmosphere is electric, and for many immigrants, it's a place of familiarity, a soft landing in a foreign land. Spanish is often heard more than English. Local restaurants carry flavors from across Latin America, and you can feel the soul of the Caribbean in everything from the music to the way people greet each other in the street. For some, this multicultural energy is empowering and deeply comforting, but for others, especially those trying to rise up economically, it can feel like the Miami dream is slipping away. So here's a question for you. What good is a city full of opportunity if most people can't afford to live there anymore? The traffic is no joke. Jammed highways and clogged streets are a daily frustration, and schools are overflowing, struggling to meet the needs of growing, diverse student populations. Wages, meanwhile, simply aren't keeping up with the pace of inflation, especially for those in hospitality, construction, and other industries that rely heavily on immigrant labor. It's a difficult balance. The same workers who build the skyline, serve the tourists, and care for families often can't afford the lifestyle they help sustain. As we look at this reality, let's remember the words of the Buddha: "No one saves us but ourselves. No one can and no one may. We ourselves must walk the path." This quote reminds us that while systems may be flawed, communities like those in Miami rise through their own strength, connection, and resilience. And yet, it also begs us to ask, how long can a city thrive when the very people who keep it running can no longer afford to stay? Miami's story is a powerful example of how growth and struggle can walk hand in hand. It's a city of contrasts. Luxury high-rises and overcrowded apartments, global success stories and local survival tales. The lesson for all of us, whether you live in Miami or watch from afar, is to recognize that diversity alone isn't enough. For a city to truly thrive, it must build with its people, not just around them. So as we move forward to the next city, one shaped by immigration from the other side of the world, ask yourself, what does it mean to belong to a place? And what can you do in your own community to make sure no one is left behind in the name of progress? Number 8. Fremont, California. Let's take a closer look at Fremont, California, a city that's rapidly becoming one of the most uniquely diverse and complex places in America. Nestled in the heart of Silicon Valley, Fremont stands out for more than just its tech-driven skyline. It's a city where nearly 47.5% of the population is foreign-born, and walking through its neighborhoods, you're just as likely to hear Hindi, Mandarin, Punjabi or Tagalog as you are English. This isn't just a community of immigrants, it's a global crossroads. Fremont has become a magnet for highly skilled workers, especially from India and China, who are drawn here by opportunities in tech giants just miles away in San Jose and Palo Alto. With a median household income of $155,000, Fremont boasts one of the highest earning populations in the country. But as many of you know, income doesn't always equal comfort. And that's where this story starts to get complicated. Because while the salaries might sound impressive, the cost of living here is off the charts. The median home price is now around $1.5 million, and if you're renting, expect to pay at least $3,000 a month for even a modest apartment. These numbers don't just challenge low-income families, they make it hard for even the middle class to survive here. Young families, recent graduates, and even some tech professionals are finding themselves priced out of the very city they helped build. And it's not just about money. Traffic congestion is an everyday battle, with commuters spending hours stuck on the I-880 or Highway 680 trying to get to work, pick up their kids, or make it to school events on time. The pace is relentless, and many residents are starting to ask, what are we really gaining in return for this constant hustle? But perhaps the most subtle yet powerful shift happening in Fremont is the cultural transformation, and it's one that's raising both admiration and concern. With such a high percentage of foreign-born residents, Fremont has one of the lowest proportions of US-born citizens of any major American city. Schools are vibrant with languages, traditions, and global perspectives, and local businesses cater largely to immigrant communities. On the surface, this is a beautiful thing. Diversity brings richness, flavor, and depth to daily life. But underneath that, some residents are beginning to wonder, what happens when a city becomes so globally oriented that its original character fades? It's a delicate question, and not one with a simple answer. The Buddha once said, "Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace." And in Fremont's case, that word might be understanding, an invitation to listen deeply to each other rather than fear what's different. So I ask you, listener to listener, where do we draw the line between cultural growth and cultural disconnect? Is it possible for a city to evolve in such a way that no one feels left out, even as languages, customs, and norms shift around them? Or do we need to start thinking more intentionally about how we build bridges between communities? Bridges that preserve belonging for both long-time residents and new arrivals. Fremont's story is not just about housing or traffic or tech. It's about identity, integration, and the future of what it means to be American. And as we continue this journey through the most immigrant-filled cities in the country, take a moment to reflect on your own community. Is it growing in a way that invites connection or creating distance in the name of progress? Because real community isn't just about who lives next door, it's about how we choose to live together. Number 9. Jersey City, New Jersey. Let's turn our attention to Jersey City, New Jersey, a place that may sit in the shadow of Manhattan's towering skyline, but is quickly earning a story all its own, one of immense growth, rich cultural layering, and mounting pressure on every corner of its infrastructure. Known as New York's unofficial sixth borough, Jersey City is one of the most densely populated cities in the country. And when you learn that over 41.7% of its residents are foreign-born, you start to understand why the streets feel like they're overflowing with life, diversity, and frankly, stress. This city has become a key landing spot for immigrants from India, the Philippines, the Dominican Republic, and Mexico, each bringing with them stories of hope, hustle, and heritage that have reshaped the city's identity. But with that rapid transformation comes intense strain. The average rent for a one-bedroom apartment now sits above $3,100 per month, and home prices have skyrocketed by 35% in just the past 5 years. A staggering shift that makes you wonder how long working class and immigrant families can afford to stay. And because Jersey City is already tightly packed with limited land to grow outward, the only way to expand is up, leading to a wave of high-rises that don't always match the infrastructure needed below. Public transportation, once the city's greatest asset, is now reaching its breaking point. The PATH trains into Manhattan are often standing room only, bus routes are crammed, and for those who rely on cars, the traffic ranks among the worst in the nation. Add to that overcrowded schools, ballooning class sizes, and city resources stretched razor-thin, and you begin to see the full picture. A city full of promise, but weighed down by the very growth that was meant to lift it. Yet despite all this, people keep coming. Why? Because even with its challenges, Jersey City still offers a more affordable alternative to New York City, though affordable has become a relative word. For many new arrivals, it's still the more reachable dream, a place where community ties, cultural familiarity, and slightly lower costs offer a starting point, one they hope will lead to greater stability over time. It's a tough balancing act, and the city is learning, like so many others, that welcoming diversity must come with careful planning, investment, and compassion. There's an old Buddhist teaching that says, "Chaos is inherent in all compounded things. Strive on with diligence." And in cities like Jersey City, where layers of cultures, challenges, and aspirations are compounded every day, this wisdom feels especially relevant. Growth doesn't just test a city's infrastructure, it tests its heart. So here's something to think about. How do we ensure that cities like Jersey City don't just grow bigger, but grow better? How do we honor the contributions of immigrant communities without letting affordability and livability slip through the cracks? And for those of you living in urban areas or watching your own city evolve, what lessons can you draw from Jersey City's story? Perhaps it's this: progress is not just about building up, it's about lifting up, making space not only for new high-rises, but for human dignity, affordable housing, quality education, and public systems that serve everyone, not just the top earners. As we look toward the next city, one with sleek infrastructure and a vision of the future, we're reminded that true development must come with a soul, because a city's greatness isn't just measured in its skyline, but in the well-being of the people who call it home. Number 10. Irvine, California. Let's talk about Irvine, California, a city that feels more like a carefully curated vision than a place that grew naturally over time. A city so clean, so structured, and so successful that it can seem almost unreal. But beneath that pristine surface lies a story that's both fascinating and thought-provoking. More than 40% of Irvine's population is foreign-born. Yet, unlike many cities where immigration is tied to survival or starting over, In Irvine, it's tied to global opportunity, education, and wealth. People come here not because they have to, but because they're chosen to. Irvine has become a hub for highly skilled immigrants from China, India, South Korea, and Taiwan, drawn by elite universities like the University of California, Irvine, UCI, and by booming tech and business sectors that reward top talent. And while that has fueled Irvine's rise as one of America's most successful cities, it has also created a sharp divide, because this is not a city built for everyone. With a median household income of $117,000 and home prices soaring past $1.3 million, even renting a one-bedroom apartment costs about $3,000 a month. That leaves many people out: teachers, service workers, new college grads, and families trying to build a modest life. The question practically asks itself: who is Irvine really for? And as the wealth grows, something else is shifting: the city's cultural identity. English, while still official, is no longer dominant in many parts of Irvine. Walk into a business district, a school, or a plaza, and you're likely to hear Mandarin, Korean, or Farsi. Stores, restaurants, and services increasingly cater to international residents, many of whom invest in Irvine for long-term living, not just short-term study. There's something beautiful in that, a celebration of global diversity and peaceful coexistence. But it also raises a harder question: how much change can a place absorb before it starts to lose the character of the country it belongs to? This isn't about right or wrong, it's about the complexity of growth. In Buddhist thought, we're reminded that the only constant in life is change, yet we're also warned that clinging too tightly to identity or form can create suffering. That applies to cities too. When we resist change, we isolate. When we ignore its impact, we fracture. So here's something worth asking yourself. What defines a city? Its buildings, its economy, or its people? And if its people change, should the city change too, or preserve some sense of continuity? For residents of Irvine, especially those aged 30 to 65, many of whom are watching their neighborhoods, schools, and city dynamics evolve rapidly, these are not distant debates, they're lived realities. The deeper lesson here is this: a successful city isn't just one that attracts money or talent. It's one that can weave together the stories of everyone who calls it home, regardless of where they come from. Irvine is a city of excellence, no doubt. But can it also be a city of balance, where opportunity doesn't come at the cost of belonging? As we move to the next city on our list, one that's growing so fast it can barely keep up, carry this thought with you: growth is inevitable, but inclusion is a choice. The challenge for the cities of tomorrow will not be whether they can rise, but whether they can rise together. As we wrap up this deep dive into the top 10 US cities overcrowded by immigration, one thing becomes clear. Behind the numbers, policies, and city skylines are real people, families striving, cultures blending, and communities evolving in ways that challenge and inspire us all. Whether your city made the list or you're watching from afar, remember that change isn't just happening to our cities, it's happening through us. And how we choose to respond, with compassion or with fear, with openness or resistance, will shape the soul of America in 2025 and beyond. If today's insights gave you a new perspective or sparked questions worth exploring, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone curious, and subscribe to the Journey of Wisdom. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you won't miss any of our upcoming reflections and real-world exploration. Until next time, Stay thoughtful, stay open-hearted, and remember, wisdom begins not with answers, but with the courage to ask better questions.